there's no other comments. We're talking about the union of souls and how difficult that is to achieve. When you think of just finding a marriage partner where there's a natural attraction between you and your marriage partner, uh, the union is difficult. Even with that, there's over around 50% of people get married wind up getting a divorce. And then half the people that are married for more than a few years aren't really happy in that marriage. Probably about 25% of the people that get married wind up with uh, with a happy marriage. And what this illustrates is that even with somebody that you handpicked, that you fell in love with, and you're attracted to, it still takes a lot of effort to be able to uh, function as one, to be able to be able to um, be united enough to really make the relationship work. I know some people here have had some difficult marriages, and several people have some really good marriages here going. But even if you have a good marriage, it takes effort to make it work and make it to so it continues to work and continues to function so that you can be one. So that illustrates. But on the other hand, take uh, people that are um, uh, just get together with a group like we're doing right here, and you figure we're all quite different. We all got different opinions on different things. Not everybody sees the same politically and everything. So uh, some people may be for vaccinations, some against, or whatever. You know, there's lots of different opinions people have. So if two people in a marriage relationship where there's that strong initial attraction, if they have difficulty reaching union, uh, people that are much more diverse, it's an even greater challenge. So this is why it doesn't happen more often, because it does take an effort and to overlook the personality. The personality just gets in the way like crazy. Now, if you get a group of people together, just say a dozen strangers, and you have a meditation and they don't know each other, then there's not much of a problem, because they're not looking at each other's personalities. And so you can hit uh, a fairly high degree of union of strangers that don't know each other. Then that's an advantage to some degree, but it only takes them so far. They can establish a nice, warm group energy, even though they may be strangers, and even though if they knew each other better, they may not like each other. But because they don't know each other, there's nothing to overlook. They're just totally in the present because they don't know each other. But groups get together and they produce a group energy, and oftentimes it's somewhat of an advantage to have people that don't know each other very well, because they don't know what's the matter with the other guy. They don't know what they wouldn't like about the other guy. But but what is where the possibility of extra power through union comes is when you can get a group of people together that share in greater power and are able to get to know each other, yet still overlook the personality. Then you have the opportunity to have a group that is of use to the hierarchy, so that they can use this as an extension of themselves. And that extension of themselves we call the molecular relationship. And to make this happen is interesting. and one of my favorite scriptures around such a union is where Jesus said, where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And um, the esoteric writings emphasize that point where even just two people that touch, that completely agree, that agree with understanding, not just agree because they don't know anything about each other, but they know each other and they agree and they join their minds together. It produces tremendous power, even two people. And three people, it's amplified. So you could imagine what it would be like with 24 people when you have a molecular number that is activated. So it's interesting to contemplate. So the first great step is to unite with your own soul, and that's what we did with our earlier meditation. We had we had a union with our higher self, and so this this is where you could say where two or three meet together in my name. Well, you can meet together with your higher self. If you can join with your higher self and be one with your higher self, then you produce as an individual a point of great power. And then if you get together with another individual and you can both merge with your higher self and then be one together, then uh, there's a point of even much greater power produced. And this is one of the things that's really overlooked, is how much power can be produced through what we call the union of souls. The individual must be taught to reach a point of tension in his union with the higher self. There's three things that the point of tension brings. One, the still small voice. Two, the peace that passes all understanding. And three, the baptism of fire. Okay, let's start with a still small voice. This is the first thing the person on the path encounters in relation to the soul. How about the group here of you had experience with a still small voice? Let's pick on Jill. Have you had the still small voice come to you before, Jill?
Oh, I had to unmute. Yes, I have. Um, and it seems to be restricted to when I'm meditating. I don't think I have had it come to me at any other time.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And not every time I meditate, but if it's going to happen, that's when it does.
Yeah, it's really difficult just to say, okay, still small voice, say something, you know. But
I do not summon it. No.
yeah, it comes when it decides you need to hear something. It seems like, from my experience. So yeah, it's interesting. You get it during your meditation.
I do.
I often get stuff like that when I'm just driving down the road with my mind kind of blank, and then then sometimes something will come, and especially when I used to, like I told you, I used to drive back and forth to New Plymouth. It was 100 miles a day just driving back and forth, plus what I drove around town. I probably drove about 120 miles a day, and give me a lot of time to, I think was in a meditative state, just looking at that highway as I was driving half the time. And sometimes things would just come out of the blue when I was just driving down the road. But okay, the next thing is the peace that passes all understanding. Does anyone here feel they've experienced that?
Well,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, there are different levels of of equanimity and feeling peace and that internal sensation that where you can handle any turbulence that's going on around you. But that peace that you achieve when you go to your higher mind or your ajna center uh, is a peace that really passes all understanding. It's just an incredible, it's a non-sensational sensation of being.
Yeah, and the third was the baptism of fire, and I know you had kind of the experience with that when you sought the truth of reincarnation, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like for 3 days, and it wasn't anything that I could reconstruct. I couldn't refabricate that feeling again. It just was there to testify the veracity of reincarnation, and then it left.
Okay. Anybody else have a experience with peace or fire that they want to relate? I bet Kenny's felt something once before. What have you experienced, Ken?
Well, the most powerful one that I had that was identified with what I thought was my soul angel was about, I think it was in 2010. It was the first year that I was aware of the WESEC festival. And yeah, I remember I just laid down on the floor or something there in the living room. And while I was laying there, my whole body just started vibrating really strong vibration. And it went into a vision. And wow, it was really powerful. And I could see myself, and then I saw a part of me come out of myself. And then I was aware that there was a presence with me that was causing all this to happen.
Yeah, great.
And so I was given a name, but I don't want to share it either. I don't think I should, but
Was
I
it
was given a definite name.
was it a name connected with your higher self or what?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Did you?
well, that's what I'm connecting. I'm not sure that's the name of my soul angel, but it's the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. So, and it did stay with me for 3 days.
Have you? Yeah, 3 days is kind of interesting how that affects you for that time period. Now, have you ever used that name? Have you ever called upon it?
Yeah, I use that name for my soul angel.
Oh, okay. So, when you used it, have you felt an internal response of some kind?
Well, nothing as powerful as that day, but using that name is helpful because I go back to that vision, and like when I use that name, I'm remembering that vision too, and I know what's that there's something linked to it that's very important. I don't know if it's my soul angel
Yeah, these
or
experiences don't come like every day, and you can't always just call them forth. But one thing you're doing right there is you go back and you can relive that experience, and that's very helpful because if you don't keep that experience in your mind, you can kind of lose the benefit. So when you have a spiritual experience, or it's good to reflect upon it and kind of take your mind back there. Uh, and it helps you to remember how real it was. Because people get spiritual amnesia. Some people have some really wonderful spiritual experiences and then just get distracted with life and just kind of live ordinary life after that without drawing on that uh, experience. So, well, thanks for sharing, Kenny. Okay, now that,
JJ, I'd like to add,
yeah, sure.
I'd like to add that peace isn't a vibration or an energy that'll come to you. Us being co-creators, we have to project this. We have to find inner peace and project our peace out, and the return vibrations, according to the law, peace returns to us. Peace just doesn't come to us automatically. We have to, within ourselves, find peace, understand it, and vibrate those feelings out. And that return cycle brings that peace back to us.
Right, and if you do center yourself in peace, people will kind of sense it around you also. People will just feel a little bit more peaceful, unless they're rabble rousers or whatever, completely centered in materialism. But people that are sensitive to the soul at all, if you're centered in a state of inner peace, they'll be drawn to you. And so that's something to keep in mind. Okay, the disciple must learn the difference between the vibrations received from various sources. So there's a thought forms out there, and then there's vibrations from the soul, and then there's a difference in vibration and interplay of souls from high emotional levels, such as for instance, there's a strong vibration that happens when you share romantic energy, and romantic energy is shared. It's a reflection of the soul that people of average spiritual evolution can identify with. And this is one of the purposes of this attraction, is to make people aware that there's something higher through a united connection. And so romantic energy is very powerful, but it's different than the pure soul energy. And if that's the highest that people have felt, then they won't be able to tell the difference. But the pure soul energy is of a finer vibration. But the romantic energy is very powerful because it affects your emotional body very, very strongly. And so it's something that people can recognize. Now, some people have really never fallen in love throughout their entire life, but even if they haven't, they have an instinct. They know what it would feel like if they did fall in love. I mean, they have that internal recognition of what falling in love would be like, even if they haven't found the love of their life. Everyone has a sense of what it would be like to find the ideal mate and to really fall in love. Then when people do fall in love, then they think, yes, this is what I vision it would be. And it's a great feeling. Most people have had a strong falling in love feeling a couple of times in their life. How about you, Dave and Robin? How did you two fall in love? What happened to you guys?
We do.
How did you meet?
Well, we drove for the same trucking company, Conway Western Express. And I had to meet a driver at the Home Depot dock in Temecula, California. And I went and got gloves. When I walked back, this guy was sitting in my trailer, and all I could think was, I'll use a different word, but my first thought was, oh crap, because I had a really good life going, single and nice job, had home, and here comes this guy, and it was an instant thing.
Was it like a recognition almost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was really, that's the worst thing is I really thought, oh crap, man, now everything's messed up. But 25 years later, I'll fix him yet.
How about you, Dave? How long did it take you to recognize that you wanted to pursue this gal?
It wasn't quite that quick, but when I knew, I knew.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with her then.
Yeah. Do you remember the time that it really happened, that she really hooked you?
Yes, we were driving in separate cars, and she pulled alongside of me on the right, and I looked over at her, and it just hit me then. I love her, you know. It just seeing her face, that's when it hit me.
Yeah, when you fall in love, it's funny. It seems like there's one moment that you remember that you just knew that was it. Yeah, can you identify with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting how that is. That's a little bit the same with the soul. When the disciple reaches soul contact, it's also a moment that he remembers. You remember when you got that still small voice? It's not quite as impactful as, like, say, the peace that passes all understanding, or maybe you got a revelation of some kind, or some important message. But there's certain encounters you have with your soul that you remember specific moments. But it is interesting, the falling in love. When you think of that moment that you actually fell in love, like my wife and I describe it, that Thursday evening, we call it. We still remember it was a Thursday evening, and when we talk about it, we say, "Oh, that Thursday evening," you know. And when we say those words, we both remember that moment that it happened. So it's interesting. So anyway, everybody has the opportunity to have that falling in love moment. Maybe not in a particular life, but we've all had it in past lives, and we will have it in future lives. And some people go through 2, 3 marriages where they're all bad, and there was ups and downs, and they think, boy, I wish I could have met my one and only. Well, it will happen sooner or later, but circumstances are all designed in our lives so that we can learn the most. So it's important that we look at our lives instead of thinking, well, you know, I never met my one and only in this life. I kind of was shortchanged. But the thing is, and about reincarnation, where we have many lives, everything evens out. So nobody gets shortchanged. I mean, we all get opportunity to fulfill every desire that we've ever had. And then when we fulfilled every desire that we could think of, then it's time to go home. But we're like the prodigal son right now, where we're journeying and using our godly powers in ways that some are somewhat wasteful, and we don't understand what we're supposed to do with them completely. And so, but we will eventually fulfill all of our dreams. And then when we do, we will desire to return. We'll have this feeling like a homesickness. Can anybody identify with this? Let's pick on somebody else here. Who shall we pick on? Johan, we haven't picked on him very much. Do you have a feeling of a homesickness for a place that's beyond this earth?
Yes.
Yeah. And when do you feel this? Kind of like when you're just contemplating by yourself or what?
Whenever I have a dull moment,
Yeah, yeah.
I just
Yeah.
want to go home.
Yeah, we all have that feeling to some extent, some much more than others. If you're having a really great life, you don't think about it as much. If you're having some difficulties, that's when you kind of think, boy, you know, there must be someplace better than this. But so it just depends on your circumstances a lot. So anyway, we need to differentiate between these things, between the love energy. The love energy is really wonderful, but the and it's very close to the soul energy. But the pure solar energy is more refined. Okay. Now, the person also needs to differentiate between messages given. There's all kinds of messengers out there claiming to have contact with higher sources. And some of them teach a lot of truth, and some of them teach a lot of illusion. So the disciple needs to learn to differentiate by their vibration. When you see a teacher that you think is has possibilities, has some truth, the disciple needs to be able to tune into his vibration and recognize the difference between one that is in glamour and is in it for the lower self, and one that really wants to serve and has a message with higher truth. And so that's an important distinction. And then the person must learn the difference between high emotional energy and the soul. Many people think that when they get in contact with a high emotional energy, that they have contacted God himself. You meet a lot of people like this in the regular religions, that they get very emotional. They think God is speaking to them. They're tuning in to a high vibration in their emotional body. And they haven't gone beyond this yet. So this is the highest they've accessed. So they think that that is God, and really all energies come from God, but this this high emotional energy is not soul contact. It's a reflection of soul contact, you might say. And so the disciple must learn to recognize the difference, or until he does, he can be deceived very easily. Because if he comes across then a teacher that teaches something that causes his high emotional body to respond to, then they'll associate this with truth and God, and they'll likely to swallow everything the guy says. And so
That's what happened to Hercules in Gemini. He encountered that teacher, a false teacher,
yeah, right.
and he believed in him so much, and the teacher took advantage of him and chained him to a rock for a year uh, until Hercules remembered that the light was within himself, and then he freed himself and chained the teacher.
Yeah, he chained the teacher to this chair, which is kind of good
Did a reversal.
feature there. Yeah, yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. I could really identify with that because
It's easy to get sucked in with that high emotional energy, that thought form energy of different religions. We were sucked into it.
yeah,
Wow.
the church is set. They tell you that the leaders know what God wants you to do, and listening to the leaders is like God because they tell you what the Word of God is, and so they carry this deception. And what's kind of sad too is many people, they break off from the churches and then join some new age group where they have a leader do the same thing to them all over again, but they think they've moved on, but they haven't. And so
Right.
just moving from one group to another where you have a substitute one authority for a new authority isn't the liberation that's needed. The liberation that's needed is where your highest authority is what?
Well, your soul.
Right, your inner self. The kingdom of God is within, and we can benefit by teachers and what other people have to say, but the verification, the final verification needs to come from within. Because if you're in touch with the soul and someone is speaking truth, the soul within will vibrate and you will know that the truth has been spoken.
When you
Yeah.
when you learn or discover new things, I wrote in a song once, every time I do discover, it's like love to me. So by the time there's nothing left undone, oh, what a lover I will be.
Very good.
But yeah, when you learn a new thing, you've seen the cartoons where a little light bulb goes off above your head. It's like that really happens inside your brain. All your neurons light up simultaneously when you experience a new lesson.
Yeah.
Kazing.
Okay. Then finally, the disciple must learn to differentiate between the vibration of his individual soul and the energy of an unseen guide or master that you may feel the vibration of. The difference will be you'll feel a sense of a little bit of an outside vibration, where the soul is just about 100% within yourself. But you may at times feel the sense of other entities around you or trying to communicate with you. But yeah, I'll give one example. That happened to me was when Curtis's mom died, which is my sister. Curtis's dad gave me a call and he said, "We want somebody to go to your mom," which is Gertrude's, both her and my mom. And he says, "We want her to be told in person about her death." And so I was the closest. I was 50 miles away, so I volunteered. And when I was driving there, I felt her presence, and it was, it felt really good. And but it's definitely different than receiving information from my own soul. It wasn't completely within. I could sense her presence without, but communicating within. And she was concerned about how my mom would take her death. And so she communicated to me that she was tagging along, so to speak, because she wanted to comfort my mom. And what was interesting was when I went and sat down with my mom and I told her that her daughter had died, I was surprised how well she took it. It was like, she just said, "Well, I never expected any of my kids to die before me." But she took it really good. And I felt like her presence was there comforting my mom. And so sometimes when you do encounter the presence of whether it be somebody you know or some angelic person or even a master, it will be a different vibration than your soul. So, okay, any comment on that before we move on here?
Yeah, it's funny that that she said that to you about, or my dad said that your mom would be upset by it. My mom took me aside and she said, "I'm not worried about me dying." She said, "I'm worried about Stanley because he's more attached to me than he lets on." And sure enough, he took it really, really hard, harder than your mom did.
Yeah, he took it real hard. And I was surprised though how well my mom did take it. Of course, she's kind of a trooper anyway, but uh, I am convinced that your mom was there speaking comfort in her ear, so to speak. Okay, those who learn to differentiate between the soul energy and these other energies and will have a unique capacity to achieve oneness in thought. When a complete molecule achieves oneness of thought through becoming sensitive to the soul, then the spiritual hierarchy, which is presided over by the Christ, can pour forth its spiritual energy, which is channeled down from the very presence of God to the group here upon earth. At that moment, the veil between heaven and earth is rent in twain, and the group is translated from the kingdom of humanity to the kingdom of God. And this is where we aspire to go, is to take a whole group from the kingdom of humanity to the kingdom of God. And it's difficult to achieve. It's only been achieved probably a couple times in the history of the world that we know of. And but once it's achieved, it will be duplicated, and a lot of people will be seeking to achieve this translation. Now, there may be ashrams presided over by masters where they've achieved things that we don't even know about, but what we want to do is something that we don't have any record of anyone doing outside of Christ and possibly the days of King Arthur and Camelot.
Well, regardless of who else has done it, it'll be the first for us.
Right, right.
That's the important thing.
Yeah. So on the illusionary plane of the personality, it's difficult to achieve this union. But if our consciousness is centered on the great illusion, then the grand order of synthesis and all things not apparent is can be overlooked, and unity can be achieved. And what's interesting about this is one thing that helps put things in perspective is realizing that we are a dream of the soul. And think of, if we are a dream of the soul, then what we really need to do is wake up. If we can wake up as a group, then we can become soul connected so that the one life can flow through us. Now, on a higher level, there's parts of ourselves that are united with God. And all the billions of lives on the earth are like a cell in the entire body of God, but it's the higher part of ourselves, and it's already there. And so what we need to do is just wake up to it. And so when you think of focusing on waking up, it's interesting to contemplate on what a dream is. Now, if we are the dream of the soul, it can help us to understand what we're going through if we examine a regular dream. When you dream at night, each dream has a beginning and an end. And when the dream is over and you wake up, it's almost like the dream never happened. Now think of when you die and you return to your soul. It'll be like waking up, and this whole life that you're living now will seem like something you did in a dream state. So that's interesting to contemplate. But there's a big difference. There's quite a few differences between the dreams you have at night and the dream of the soul that you're having. There's similarities and there's differences. The similarities is that each dream you have at night has a beginning and an end. Now your life, which is the dream of the soul, it has a beginning and an end. It's just a longer period of time. A lot more happens, okay? The dream at night, reality shifts around quite a bit and can change very quickly. You can dream you're in one scene and then pretty soon you're in a totally different scene, different circumstances. Now in life, we go through different circumstances, but on a much slower time scale. But we still go through quite a few changes. Like think of maybe you were married to a different person 10 years ago, and think of how different your life is now. And that's almost like but then compress that, pretend like it all happened in 15 minutes, okay? When you have a dream at night, it may happen in only 15, 20 minutes, but you have a shifting going around. It's just time goes a lot faster. Now, you dream at night, your presence is not all there. You can't really make a conscious decision in your dreams unless you really put a lot of attention and focus on having a vivid dream. But we got more parts of ourselves together in this dream we're having right now. We have our mind and the astral body linked together. In your dream at night, your mind goes somewhere else and your astral body programs the dream for you. So there's more of you together. Now, if you can wake up from this dream, then you have an extra component that makes a greater part of you. So think of that. When you dream, you're not all there. You just and it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's governed by your emotional body, and your emotional body is not very logical. That's why your dreams are not very logical. Okay, you wake up. When you wake up, your dream is gone, but you don't feel a loss. You feel a gain because there's more of you there. Your mind is now there, connected with your emotions. Your mind and emotions are there. You can now make these actual decisions again based on logic and reason and whatever. Now think, if you could wake up a second time, if you could wake up a second time, you're going to have another piece of you added to what you are now. And it will not be loss, but it will be like a gain. Just like when you wake up from a dream at night, there's more of you there. When you wake up from this dream, there will be more of you. And you will have more power, more strength, more life, energy, more everything. And but what we want to do, we want to be able to wake up while we're still here. And the key to waking up is to realize that we're asleep, that an important part of us is not available to our consciousness, and that's the soul energy. And the soul energy is a powerful love energy. And one of the best ways to amplify this and to wake up is through the principle of overlooking the personality and through the principle of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a principle that Jesus taught over and over, and he emphasized this more than anything else. And Peter kind of got tired of hearing it. He says, well, Lord, he says, how often do I need to forgive somebody if they're just making a nuisance of themselves? Would forgiving somebody 7 times be enough? Anybody remember what answer Jesus?
It's 70 times 7,
He says, no, not 7 times. He says 70 times 7. And so,
which really means an infinite amount.
right. So that's more than you can forgive anybody. So what he's really saying, there's no end. Always forgive. And he demonstrated this when he was on the cross. Said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And could you imagine the impact that had on any of the people that put him to death that actually heard him say that? They probably either thought he was crazy, or else it might have influenced them in a positive way. But how is it that having a forgiving attitude can help you enter a state of being awakened? Awakened so you have more soul contact.
Well, first you have to forgive yourself completely, assuage all guilt. You're not feeling guilty or bad about any decisions that you made in the past, because you made them at the time for a reason. So you have to forgive yourself, and then you're in a state of what's the word? There's a word I'm thinking of.
It would be, you feel at peace when you forgive yourself. That's for sure.
Yeah, you feel at peace, and yeah, it's just an acceptance more than anything else.
And
that
if
you
we look
feel.
on, if we look on our brothers and sisters as extensions of ourselves, then when you forgive somebody that offends you, you're forgiving yourself, because everything that we take in from other people is what we perceive. And we perceive and then we interpret. And how often have you had people perceive you incorrectly? Maybe you said, cracked a joke or said something that you thought was completely innocent, but somebody took it entirely wrong. Let's pick on old Adam. You ever have anybody do that to you, Adam? You kind of crack a joke or something and you think it's kind of funny and people get highly offended?
Pretty much every day.
By Marnie.
I have a group of buddies. We've been friends since elementary school. There's about 12 of us, and we still communicate. And and probably 9 out of 12 of them are still active LDS.
Oh, are they? Oh, yeah.
And one of them's a general authority. He was just called to the quorum of 70.
Really?
Yeah. So I walk a fine line every day in communicating with these guys, trying not to be too over the top, but trying to push them a little bit, and
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure I offend them all the time.
Yeah, I know that I consider myself pretty harmless guy, yet it's amazing how many times I can say something or create some action that somebody interprets entirely wrong. And they'll say, well, you said this and you meant this. I said, no, that's not what I meant at all. And they won't believe it. You say what you really meant. And they just will not believe that's what you really meant, because they perceived something entirely different than you wanted to project. Okay. And the true reality is what was in your heart. And people don't want to look in others' hearts very much. They want to find If they've got their mind made up to find fault, they will find fault. And so this is the problem behind with forgiveness, is we perceive incorrectly. And to perceive correctly, we must look at the person's heart. And when you look at the person's heart, you'll see that almost everybody, except for maybe a very small handful, are doing their best. You know, they're struggling. They're not trying to hurt anybody. They're just living their life. And they're, every decision they make is best they can come up with. And every word they speak is the best they can think of at the time. But we may perceive that totally different than they mean you to perceive it. And this is a big problem. This really helps with forgiveness, to realize that in the core of each being is the Christ. And so whatsoever you do unto the least of these, my brethren, you do unto me. And so who is the least of the brethren? When they preach this in the church, they think of the least of the brethren as being some beggar on the street or somebody like that. But that's not the least of the brethren. The least of the brethren is that person who is most aggravating to you in your life. He's the least in your mind. He's worse than the beggar on the street. You don't hold anything against the beggar on the street, okay? But you may hold something against somebody that said something offensive to you, or maybe did something to you, or maybe stole some money from you, or whatever. This person is the least of the brethren. And whatsoever you do unto the least of these, my brethren, he says, you do unto me. And so because of this, it's always important to forgive, and as if the thing never happened. To live in the present, so that the past does not have a negative influence over you. And that's very difficult to accept. But the more the person can accept this, the closer he will get to his own soul, and the closer he will get to being awake. And that's why earlier we did that meditation where we were awakened. And so this is what I'd leave you with is as you're going to sleep at night, just visualize your soul coming to you and saying, hey, it's time to wake up, and see if you are taken anywhere. Okay, any comments or questions before we wrap it up?
I do want to add that forgiveness is a very powerful energy. There's an experiment where you just go out and at random pick a person and forgive them, and watch the amazing effect it has on their face. They're very thankful that you forgave them.
Yeah, it brings them very close, makes them feel very close to you. That's good. Okay, any other comments?
Well, the word I was trying to conjure up a while ago is grace, and how we just hold each other in a state of loving grace, and accept that, you know, all things come alike to all. We've all done whatever we're judging someone else for doing, we've done. So, you know, you can't cast stones, and you just have to accept everybody where they are and know we're all on this path together.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great part about reincarnation, is when you realize you live many lives, you probably figure you've made every mistake in the book at one time or another. So it makes it easier to accept and forgive other people when you realize that we all go through a number of lives and commit every mistake possible just about before we finally enter into our right mind. Okay, any other comments or questions? Well,
We've all been rich. We've all been poor. I like rich better.
I hope everybody had a happy Easter. By the way, we I'm meeting Tuesday because of Easter, but next Sunday we'll meet again next Sunday, and until then, have a good week.
I was gonna say, JJ, also this month is the Wesak full moon.
Oh, is it? Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to keep the. What day is it on? Do you know?
I'm not for sure.
Yeah, okay, well, Matt,
23rd, I think.
we'll have to have a special meeting for that then. Okay, thanks for
It'll
reminding me.
probably be 4 a.m.
Yeah, probably. It'll be 4 a.m. for somebody, no matter what.
Somebody, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, my friends. Great to have you, and we will see you next week,
Sunday.
next Sunday.